just to give a background of a project which I have been involved in for more than 10 years, it's finished now. This was as a research associate to Professor Jagdish from Indian Institute of Science. And he had taken up a project to study how the domes and vaults as a technology or as a construction technology have evolved in southern India. So I became a research associate to him, and we did a study for over 8 to 10 years, looking at various monuments in the region of Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, and seeing how they have evolved, what's the construction system, and so on. So this resulted in a monograph. It was sponsored by Indian Academy of Engineering, and we came out with a monograph. So these are some glimpses of that. And here it was quite interesting because we were able to trace some kind of constructions which were even like very indigenous ones, and some kind of early corbelling technologies, the influences of the Mughals and how the construction of domes and arches changed and evolved within these regions. And this is one of the earliest domes in a place called Arsikere in Hassan, where we actually see, even before the coming of the Muslims, how they have actually experimented with true dome technologies. So some interesting things that emerged out of that. And while we were on it, and through my practice in conservation, working on restoration works, moving around on ASI monuments, I came across a lot of monuments in this kind of distress. So from Bidar, we can see this kind of a thing where the half dome is collapsed. We looked into that. Then I came across this kind of a structure in Andhra Pradesh, Srikakulam, a Dutch bungalow, and we can see like the different kind of failures. And there have been some attempts to repair them, to restore them. Like here, it's always like when we do some kind of restoration work, first thing they see a crack and they suggest us do stitching over there, insert a lintel over there, without really understanding why that thing is happening. And when we do these kind of works, it will fail again. This kind of things don't hold there. Now that's something which we have to really understand. Again, some more examples like Tipu's Armory in Bangalore, where again we can see a vault and there's a big crack, or I wouldn't say a big crack, but a crack which runs across the top part of the vault. Aurat Masjid in Gulbarga, where we were involved in the restoration of it. So you can see a lot of cracks in the domes. This part of the arch is collapsed, it's fallen. And it's always fine, like they would come and suggest, I'm talking about structural engineers who are consultants and the other people who are involved with us. They say, just fill up the cracks, just fill it up, fill up this arch, construct it, and you can do it up. But the problem may lie somewhere else, because the way the domes, arches, and vaults, they all of a similar family. If you see the type of construction, the way they fail, maybe the reasons will be somewhere elsewhere actually. So if the failure, if you see it here, the reasons may be somewhere here in the foundation, somewhere it may be in the faulty construction technologies, it may be because of the materials that we used, it may be because of the type of repairs that have been done earlier. So we have to really understand what is the type of failure and why it's happening before we really get into what kind of a conservation strategy to be taken up. And this is something which I would, like this is some example of some restoration works that have been done. Now this is fine to hold it up, but it doesn't really address, because the way the domes work, the loading goes in a different way. So we have to really understand the behavior of these kind of structures. So that's why I picked up this topic based on the first monograph and my works on restoration, to understand these distress patterns and to come up with guidelines or come up with methodologies on how these can be conserved, how as conservation architects who are visiting the monuments, studying them, can record these patterns, which are again useful for structural engineers to assess them, understand the materials that have been used. So what are the various things one needs to understand when one sees a failure in a dome or an arch or a vault? How serious are these? How critical are these? What kind of, do they need an immediate solution, or can they be observed over the time? Can we look at them, monitor them over the time? So these are some things which I look forward to address through this study. Identify the type of distresses, understand the patterns, because in the patterns the failures may tell us what is happening to the structure basically. Is there a change in the setting itself, like the Dutch bungalow, the Srikakulam project, the whole river course had changed, which had led to the problems in the structure, and finally which is what we see as problems in the arches. methods to study the probable causes for them, and then arrive at a methodology in which we as conservation architects are regularly doing documentation followed by condition mapping and condition assessment. So can I build up guidelines where it can help them on how to do the condition assessment or condition mapping of these kind of structures where we see domes, arches and vaults. So this is the methodology that I have. It's first will be site survey, looking into the behavioral mechanics of these structures, understanding their present status of what's happening in the surroundings, interact with the guides to understand. My mentors are Professor K.S. Jagdish and Dr. Arun Menon, who will be guiding me through this research, and then identify ways to monitor them and then come up with the guidelines, which will basically help the professional people who are working on such kind of projects. And the extent of the study, because this is something again which varies across the country, so my focus would be on the area that we had picked up to do the initial study on evolution of domes, which is Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh. So that will be my large focus area during this period. Thank you.